What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Steven Ostentoski here of MaizenBrew, bringing you another episode of Freshman Feature. Sorry for the delay from episode 8. We're on episode 9 now. I moved from Chicago back to Michigan. Happy to be in the Mitten State once again. But let's get into episode 9 here. We're covering 3-star linebacker out of Baltimore, Maryland, early enrollee Nikhai Hill-Green. You can find the previous episode in the description below. As always, I'll have a link to the playlist in the icon above. Let's get into episode 9 here. All right, so for his high school, he went to St. Francis Academy out of Baltimore, Maryland. As I said, 2 other members of his high school senior class of 2020, is enrolled at Michigan as well. Blake Corum, 4-star running back. Osmond Savage, fellow linebacker as well. So that's 2 other members of the team that joined the Wolverines. Biff Poggi is the head coach of St. Francis Academy. They're a powerhouse school, play a national schedule. They took down IMG Academy in 2019, if that gives you any sense of how good of a football team they are. 11-1 record his senior year. And this is something I didn't point out when I covered Osmond Savage, but they had 6 shutouts his senior year. So that's pretty insane. He obviously led a very good linebacker group there. He did transfer from Pennsylvania to St. Francis for his senior year, so that explains his offer list that we'll get to in a little bit. Couldn't find any stats, couldn't find any metrics. Let's skip those sections. Go right to his rankings here. So he's a 3-star to rivals, 21 inside linebacker, 19 Maryland. Both ESPN and 24/7 are a little more bullish on him. They have him as 23 and 30 outside linebacker, around the top 10 Maryland, just outside of that without national rankings. So he's right around that 3-star, 4-star border to all services, and his 24/7 composite comes in as a 3-star, just inside the top 400 nationally, 25 outside linebacker, number 17 Maryland. He's 6'2", 225 to ESPN and Rivals. 24/7 docks him an inch at 6'1", 230. Looking at his recruitment, so he's a guy who wants to do finance in college, so obviously he's academically driven. He has grad school aspirations as well, so if you're thinking of a guy who's going to, take off after 2, or not possible after 2, but after 3 years, he's a guy who wants to kind of develop at a school. That went into his decision as well. Early enrollee will help him get there early on, get that school, get those classes ahead of schedule. Obviously, Michigan's academics played a role there with a great business school, great financials as well. Program that has 2 other kids from his class going to University of Michigan. Biff Poggi, obviously a former assistant. He's a big promoter of Michigan. Finalists included Wisconsin, Indiana, Purdue, and Pitt. So beyond that final group, he had other offers from Virginia Tech, Boston College, Nebraska, West Virginia, and some smaller schools as well. So I wouldn't say that offer list is necessarily very impressive, but it's a good offer list. Looking at his scouting here, so Brian Doan of 24/7 says he moves with fluidity inside the box. Strength is nearly college ready. Very physical, smart player. He diagnoses plays and reacts very quickly. He stood out on his team, which is saying a lot. Besides all the other things, standing out on this sort of packed squad that St. Francis has, that's a very good sign. Can play both inside or outside, manipulates his way through traffic. Good tackler, uses his length as an asset, uses his hands well to disengage from blocks, understands depth drop in zone defense, drives well on the ball in front of him, and body control is a plus when blitzing. So all of that's good things. Some of the negatives are not so sure yet. Not sure if he has the sideline speed at the college game. I agree with this. Adequate speed, but definitely not an asset. Has to improve his footwork in man coverage. For a game that MGO Blog went to visit his high school there, he said that his reads are a little bit all over the place. So when he makes the right read, he looks very good doing it, but his eyes can deceive him sometimes. All right, let's look at his film real quick. All right, let's look at the inside run here. So he has a really good ability to knife through gaps. It's one of my favorite aspects of his game, and he has good quickness to him. So he's able to make himself a little bit smaller than he actually is to get through the line of scrimmage. So when he's blitzing or just accelerating through the line of scrimmage, that's where he's probably at his best. His redirection speed, I think, is very solid. He can take an initial angle, undercut a block, and make a really nice move towards the ball carrier. And he brings the heat on his hits. So he's someone who will wrap up when needed. You saw that last tackle. He wrapped up the legs on a nice dive there. But when he is making contact, full contact, he's laying a wallop on guys. You see he just ran over an offensive lineman there. So I like the physicality he brings. Nice job on that one as well. Looking on Stack and Shed here, this is something he displayed a fair amount. I'd like him to use his length a little bit more. He does have the frame to be able to do this really well. So he's adequate in this department. But right now he opts to dodge blockers at this point in his career. I think his skill set he has a good frame and arms to make it happen. He just has to improve there, and he'll be able to take advantage of that at the next level. All right, these next clips are kind of him operating in space, so not necessarily right up the middle, but him tracking from behind or him operating on the outside here. So he takes very good angles on defending outside runs, so he doesn't have to redirect a whole lot. If he does have to redirect, he makes nice minor adjustments to those angles really well. Like I said, he has adequate speed, not necessarily a plus, but obviously plenty at the top end of high school football. So it just, he's not a Devin Bush guy, but he has good enough speed, I think, to make it work on runs that are bouncing to the outside. I love how he breaks down on these outside runs. Once he's gotten enough lateral movement, he breaks down and forms up really nice. And on his pursuit, he doesn't overrun the play. So he shows good discipline on getting there, breaking down, and making the play. Just a couple clips on offense. He actually had a ton of film on offense, either as running back or a tight end, kind of like a flex wide receiver type of guy. But this showed just the overall athleticism he brings to the linebacker position. Good hands, decent amount of wiggle, surprisingly, for a linebacker. But his film on offense kind of reminded me a little bit of Eubanks, where a little bit raw in like his offensive talent, but a guy who shows a little bit more wiggle than you'd expect from a 230-pound tight end type guy. So overall, I don't expect him to be this kind of guy. You could maybe swing him as like a H-back if linebacker doesn't work out, kind of like a jumbo H-back type. But I was impressed with his offensive film, and he really had a ton. All right, looking at special teams here, only one play here, but he does have a nice punt block. Again, a good frame for it off the edge, and Michigan wants to use him for that. Now let's look at his pass defense. So offensive film already showed that he has good hands, good tracking in the screen game overall. Here you'll see some nice pick there over the middle, but I think his top end speed will limit his ability to defend quicker running backs. I think he has decent instincts in when he's sitting in zones, and a good break on the ball on these few screen passes I'll show. But for those quicker running backs, he's just not the kind of guy you want to match up on that. And he's also highly physical in coverage. We'll see that more in his film at camps coming up here, but he is very physical, which is good. I'd rather someone be physical and tone that down. All right, so here's some good camp footage. And when I say good, I just mean him winning these reps. So he's not the guy who will shine in a camp setting. He's a linebacker, going up against those quicker running backs. Like I said, not his best asset that he'll be expected to use here. That passes out of bounds. That's why I included it. So again, he's very aggressive. He does a lot of subtle grabs. And like I said initially, I'd rather tone someone's hand grabbing down than try to teach that, right? There are ways that you can get away with that. And I'd rather someone start with a little over aggressive and then tone that down a little bit. So he matches way better against tight ends, and I think he has the good size and frame to be able to defend against those guys compared to running backs. All right, so here are some reps of him losing. He does have a tendency of pushing guys into their routes. So like I said, he's a little grabby, and he just has to be careful about when he's pushing guys. Sometimes he's helping them, like that one, into their breaks, and that's just extra separation that he just helped the offensive player with that push. So he can get out of his technique without a solid jam. So if he doesn't use his frame right away and he lets a guy free release, he gets turned around pretty easily right there and loses his technique. And that's just going to be a loss against those quicker guys every time. So I think his high school film definitely showed more zone coverage. That's what I'd expect him to do more in college as well. And this is pure man-to-man. So unless it's strictly to tight ends, I'd be a little worried about Hill-Green in coverage. But again, I think he's a good athlete. This just isn't his forte. So overall with his film, I think his footwork could definitely improve. His pass technique could improve as well. But he has a great frame to work with, and I like the overall athleticism he brings to the position. So for his comp, you could put Osmond Savage, right? Fellow linebacker from the same school, around the same ranking. I think Osmond's ranked a little higher, but I'm going to go closer to Mike McCray. McCray was a 4-star back in the class of 2013. He was 6'4", 230 out of Dayton, Ohio, so obviously a little taller than what we get out of Nikhai Hill-Green here, but a clear-cut linebacker, rated as a traditional inside linebacker as well. If Hill Green was rated back in 2013, I think he would have been closer to a 4-star range, but he's kind of in the mold of, I'm a traditional linebacker, and a lot of teams and the ranking services are looking more for linebackers that have that speed that can compete with running backs out of the backfield. So Mike McCray had a 40 time of 4.76, a vertical of 31.5. That kind of seems like it would be in line with what we'd expect out of Hill Green. Concern with McCray was always his sideline-to-sideline speed. Very solid athlete, but not overly explosive. McCray had good instincts to make up for some of that and average cover skills. And I think there's a lot of similarities there with Hill Green. Obviously, McCray, he topped out as a dependable old school inside linebacker, not much NFL potential due to those athleticism drawbacks and just the change of NFL defenses these days. I'd expect that the same for Nikhai Hill Green. I think his athleticism would give him a shot at the NFL, but again, there's just fewer of those types that are getting the long-term roles in the NFL. So for projection for him, he's already pretty close to playing size. He's an early enrollee as well, which only helps there. There's been chatter of him early amongst the coaching staff in the limited practices that there have been, so that's always a good sign. So right now at inside linebacker, you have Cam McGrone, who could be NFL bound early, but I believe he did say that he would be back for one more year. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that is what he said. Charles Thomas, and then besides that, it's pretty open inside. So of the inside linebackers coming in, Hill Green probably has the best shot given his frame, his current size, and he's an early enrollee. So whether he gets a red shirt or not with the COVID situation, it's all up in the air. I'm not going to really predict that just because things are so in flux right now. But yeah, no real need for inside linebacker for 2020. I would expect him to get a red shirt, especially given he wants to go to grad school as well. There's no real rush to get him out on the field for playing time. So I would throw a red shirt on him. But again, something we'll just have to wait and see. So that's all I got for episode 9 here, Nikhai Hill Green. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is the second to last episode. Episode 10 will be the final person I'll be covering, and that'll be the entire class. I'll have wrapped up for the class of 2020. So like the video if you can. Subscribe if you haven't already. Press that bell notification to get notified every time a MaizenBrew video comes out. And beyond that, guys, stay safe out there. And as always, go blue.